This is a Blaze Radio production.
We're covering who's on deck,
hitting the ice on the hockey scene,
and hosting a racing roundtable.
This is sports.
This is news.
This is everything you need to know about the future.
This is the Scoutin Session.
Good afternoon, everyone. Glad to have you all here this Wednesday. This is the 5th episode of the Scoutin Session, where we talk the up-and-coming sports stars and highlight young standout performances at the professional level. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name is Ella Wolter-Sánchez, and as always, I'm joined by
Jordan Talley
and Noah Reed.
So, as always, we're going to start off first with who's on deck, and sticking with last week's theme, I wanted to go with a softball player again, since softball season is starting up and they had their first official week of play. So for this week, I went with Reese Atwood, and also an update on last week's guest. Najee Kennedy had her first start with Texas Tech, and over the NCFA Leadoff Classic, went 3-1 with 40 strikeouts, 20.2 innings, and a .364 batting average, 2 home runs, and 6 RBIs. So already, as expected, standing out at Texas Tech. But back to Reese Atwood. She was born in Sandia, Texas, and attended Tulsa Midway High School in Corpus Christi, Texas. In her junior year of high school, Atwood had a .478 batting average with 33 hits, 10 doubles, 8 home runs, and 29 RBIs. And then this week's fun fact is explaining batting average. Batting average is a measure of how, quote-unquote, good a person is at batting. The number/average is determined by dividing number of hits by total at-bats for a number between 0 and 1. You never really see someone's batting average at 1 unless it's the beginning of the season and they have hit in their only appearance at bat. It's essentially impossible to have anything above 0. And these are also read in the hundreds, which can make things confusing if you're hearing somebody say a .349 batting average. But it's a .349 average is read as .349, but if you see it on paper, it's .349 because all of these numbers are below 1. And just like ERA, as discussed in the last episode, a good average depends on age, level, gender, etc. For high school softball players, a good batting average is 300 or higher, and in her junior year of high school, she had a .478 batting average. So back to Atwood. In her senior year, she hit .576 with 39 runs scored, 38 hits, 24 walks, 10 home runs, and 43 RBIs. And remembering that 300 average, she's about almost 300 above, almost doubling that good average. Out of high school, she was the nation's #1 catcher and the 5th overall prospect for the class of 2022, and she signed her letter of intent for the Texas Longhorns on November 10th, 2021. And her collegiate career started for the Longhorns in 2023, and Texas is historically a good softball school, and they're currently ranked #1 overall. During her freshman year, she was in 58 games, with 56 of those being starts. She had a .291 batting average with a .313 on-base percentage. She had 43 RBIs and 50 hits. She had a .986 fielding percentage while playing at first and also being a catcher, so she's a duality player. In her freshman year, she became the first person in Longhorn history with a walk-off in 3 consecutive games. During her sophomore year, Atwood batted .433 and led the league in home runs at 21. She had 144 total bases and slugging percentage of .917. She was named the Big 12 Conference Player of the Week 3 times for her sophomore year and the D1 Softball Player / NFCA Player of the Week during the final week of play, when during that final week, she put up stats of a .700 batting average with 4 home runs and 13 RBIs against Texas Tech. So after her sophomore season, she was named unanimous All Big 12 team selection and was the Big 12 Conference Player of the Year. She was also named the Softball America Player of the Year and a top 3 finalist for USA Softball Collegiate Player of the Year. Atwood set Texas's single-year record in home runs at 23, total bases at 160, and RBIs at 90. And she's only a sophomore, only halfway through. Currently, Texas is 6-0 on the season so far, which included back-to-back shutouts for their first 2 games. And so far on the year, Atwood has had 20 at-bats with 2 home runs, 10 RBIs, and a .350 average. So, She is ranked the number 2 player, and the Najee Kennedy, who we talked about last week, is ranked the number 1 softball player. And she's just, both juniors, both great shows of talent, and she's sticking with Texas, whereas Kennedy switched to Texas Tech, but just a great show of overall softball numbers, and numbers I feel aren't really showcased very well so far.
Yeah, I mean, I just have a question since I'm not a baseball or softball person. Can you just explain RBI really quick?
Yes. Okay, so RBIs, it's a good measure of how tactical a player is at plate when there's other people on the bases. So RBI stands for runs batted in, and it's essentially when you're at the plate and you get a hit, your hit allowed for runs to be scored. So you went to first and the people on second or third scored due to your hit. So it's a stat of, obviously a very useful player when people are on base because she can get runs in, and that's obviously what you want as a team.
Yeah. Okay, so high RBIs, good thing.
Yes.
Very good thing. Okay, cool. I mean, like you said, her batting average was over like double the regular. So, I mean, how old is she?
She's a sophomore in college.
Okay, so that's just like insane to me, and that was just a little bit about her. So, I mean, I can only imagine what she does going forward.
Mm-hmm.
How familiar are you with collegiate softball?
I'm not the most familiar, but I'm pretty familiar.
Okay, because I'm looking here at the schedule because you mentioned from our hosts last week that we talked about with Kennedy playing at Texas Tech. So I was just curious when these two teams are going to square off. And February 14th, so actually this Friday. They'll play. However, I'm looking here on the schedule, and it's interesting. They've got them ranked as number 11/number 8. I don't know how the rankings work on the NCAA scene for softball. I've never seen split rankings, but it goes through the whole season where some teams are 16-16, 6-6, but then you have a team where they might be a 9-10. So I'm wondering how that works. We'll have to do some research and let y'all know.
I'm wondering how that works. It might be like a conference and then overall, like, I don't know, like in their smaller league and then overall, or it might just be a like batting in, because I know like for gymnastics, for example, the team overall is ranked, but then they also have rankings on each event, so it might be like a hitting fielding thing. I honestly have no idea. I've never seen that before either.
Could it be like a preseason ranking with like what they are now?
Possibly. I don't know, but that's actually a great question. We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
But moving forward, we now have first and goal with Jordan.
Okay, so I was scratching my head on what to do this week. I wanted to change it up a little bit because I can't keep talking about the WHL no matter how much I want to bring up Gavin McKenna every week. But so changing it up a little bit this week after the Super Bowl, we have the first segment of First and Goal for the Scoutin Session, leaving the rinks in Canada, and let's head down to the turf in New Orleans with this week's rising star, Cooper DeJean. So this is my first segment that I've done for this show, where I haven't done a junior player. So he's already drafted in the NFL. He's playing in the NFL, but he is a rookie. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to highlight this, especially after what he was able to accomplish last Sunday at the Super Bowl. You guys, did anybody get a chance to watch it?
I watched the tail end of it.
Yeah, I don't know if we can call that a football game.
You didn't miss much.
Yeah,
I will say
I don't
that.
think we did.
I mean, I don't know that much about football, but yikes.
But you did miss this amazing performance by rookie Cooper DeJean. So let's just go back to this. Cooper DeJean, he's 6 foot. He's 198 pounds. He's a cornerback for the Philadelphia Eagles. I know everyone and their mom who was watching the Super Bowl this past Sunday remembers the amazing pick six by rookie cornerback Cooper DeJean. He was drafted with the 40th overall draft pick in the 2024 NFL Draft from the University of Iowa. In his senior season at Iowa, DeJean recorded 26 solo tackles and 15 assists with a total of 41 tackles and 2 interceptions. And that was just his senior season. I think that also got cut short. I think he got an injury that ended his season a little bit early, but still amazing numbers. While at Iowa, he set a single season record of 3 interceptions returned for touchdowns in his 2022 season. And here's just some of his awards. There was a whole list of them, but here are some from his senior season. He was unanimous All-American first team, mid-season All-American first team, Big Ten Defensive Back of the Year. Let me just go search for some of them. He was named Big Ten Special Teams Player of the Week a few times. He was Player of the Week nominee a few times. Preseason first All-American by the AP. Preseason first All-Team All-Big Ten by a bunch of different things. So he's just been constantly putting his name out there and getting these recognitions in college. In 2022, he was Music City Bowl Most Valuable Player, Special Teams Award, Overall Team Hustler Award, Defense named First Team All Big Ten. Just like over and over and over again, getting these All-American recognitions, Big Ten Player of the Week recognitions, Defensive Player recognitions. So constantly putting up the numbers. After he was drafted to Philly, he was almost immediately a starter, which is interesting to see, especially in the NFL. I feel like a lot of rookies don't necessarily start a lot in their first season, especially on the defense. You usually see them more mainly as like backups to the backups, especially in the rookie season when they're developing, especially at this corner position, which is arguably one of the most difficult positions in all of football. Like, I don't think there's anything harder than a corner. So after he was drafted, he was almost immediately a starter, playing 16 out of 17 regular season games, playing both cornerback and punt return, and he was a starter by week 3. So he just missed two games of the regular season, pretty much, or 2 weeks, I should say. On punt returns, he had 211 yards on 21 returns, and for cornerback, he recorded 51 total tackles, 38 solo, and 13 assists, 3 fumble recoveries, and 1 forced fumble. His lone interception comes on the biggest stage in the world. Last Saturday, DeJean recorded his first career pick 6 when he picked off Patrick Mahomes for a 38-yard touchdown return in the second quarter, helping the Eagles extend the lead to 17-0. He's the second rookie to have a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, and get this, it was his 22nd birthday on the Super Bowl.
That's
so and he was the first to have one on his birthday at the Super Bowl. So just some super cool things. I mean, I was watching the Super Bowl with some of my friends who aren't even huge football players. Of course they're not football players. Huge football people, but we were up and yelling, and it was like, Cooper DeJean, like, run. Like, is his first career interception, first career defensive touchdown. I mean, who wouldn't want all their first to happen at the Super Bowl? Like, I feel like that's just the craziest stage to have it happen on. So, you look like you want to say something.
And only at 22? Like,
Yeah.
On his birthday.
That's
freshly 22.
That's pretty darn impressive. I mean, we talk about the NFL. You got to take time to have that development, to really get into your groove. And we've seen a lot of young players kind of face a lot of pressure, especially in recent years, with the draft number appearing to get just, lower and lower and lower. So to see DeJean really step up on, like you said, with the spotlight on and the camera shining their brightest and the pressure at its peak, arguably, he walks away with a Super Bowl championship ring. That's insane.
I mean, he won a ring his first year in the league. Like, and to say that he, you can say that, like, oh, yeah, I mean, I was on a Super Bowl winning team. I still get the ring. I still get the trophy. Yeah. He played and contributed to that score. 6 of those points that came out of this game was his pick 6 return. So I just thought that was so awesome. I mean, especially, it was just perfectly read too. Like, if you watch the play, you just watch how perfectly read it was. Patrick Mahomes was, the pass was intended for DeAndre Hopkins, and just Cooper immediately read that and just got in the way and got it. I think he said afterwards, he was like, immediately when the ball touched my hands, I was just trying to look for Green to run around and tried to get it in the end zone. And I'm so glad he did, because what a spectacular moment for him in his first season and his first Super Bowl appearance, and he wins the first Super Bowl. So, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no better place to have it than at the Super Bowl and on your birthday. Like, that's just so crazy. And I can't even imagine, like, the feeling, too. I feel like I would have just, like, completely blacked out when the ball was in my hands. Like, what is happening?
I think he did. There was a quote about that after the fact. Because obviously that's what everyone's going to ask him about is, how was that? Like, how are you feeling? He's like, I think I just blacked out. Like, I don't remember. I was just running, trying to find the green, trying to find the space. And I'm almost pretty sure, I didn't get this written down, but I'm almost pretty sure that the MVP voting, obviously Jalen Hurts ended up with MVP deserved, but I think Cooper DeJean, he was runner-up for MVP. So imagine, or like second, I think it went Jalen, Saquon, and then him, or something crazy like that. Imagine winning MVP as well in your first Super Bowl appearance in your rookie year. Like, that would be insane. But yeah. So that was the first segment of First and Goal for the Scoutin Session. So
yay!
Let's take it back.
Yeah, we're going to rewind, actually.
Yeah, I was doing some research while listening to Jordan. And because as baseball, softball fan, I have never seen this before, so it's great that Noah pointed it out. I found out what the rankings mean. So basically, there's several ways that normally, everybody has the rankings. They have one place that they look. Softball actually has two. So there's the NFCA/USA Today poll, which is voted on by a panel of 32 D1 softball coaches. So that's one of those rankings. And the second is by ESPN.com/US Softball Collegiate Rankings. And they rank the top 25 teams nationally, and it cuts off at 25. And so, for example, we saw that Texas Tech is number 11 and number 8. So they're voted number 11 by the coaches poll, and then number 8 is denoted by ESPN and USA Softball. So a little interesting stat if you're looking at softball rankings and all that, and you see multiple at once like we did.
That's really interesting. I've never seen
anything like that.
Collegiate teams take two rankings into account. It's usually always the coaches poll or like the AP or something. So
they have one source, but yeah, kind of interesting to see, also how the coaches rank them versus ESPN. But
yeah. I feel like
and seeing the differences too is interesting.
I feel like that says a lot too about, because I wonder like how both of them get different results, if that makes sense. Like, what does one take into account versus the other, or vice versa? So that's very, very interesting.
So another interesting nugget, but now back to regularly scheduled programming with the Racing Roundtable with Noah.
Yeah, we're going to roll on into this week's edition, and for NASCAR fans who have been paying any sort of attention to the short track scene recently, you are well aware of 12-year-old Keelan Harvick. That's right, the third-generation racer is following the path set by his father, 2014 NASCAR Cup Series champion Kevin Harvick. This young man began his career less than 5 years ago, guys, running a go-kart at the Trackout Motorsplex. He'd never been behind the wheel of a race car in a race before getting into this go-kart. In that, he qualified on the pole. Set quick time, and I think that was kind of where people were like, okay, you have it. Yeah. A lot of drivers will say you have it. The talent, the reaction, the ability to push, beyond what a typical person could handle in a car and go beyond and be truly excellent. And he finished 8th in that race, but still an incredible showing. And he spent the early years of his career, again, running go-karts, both nationally and internationally. He won 7 championships in 2021 alone, backed those performances up with a podium in the Le Mans Karting International IAME World Finals back in 2022. He also won the 2023 Inex Road Course World Finals in the Young Lions class. Then in November of 2024, Keelan made his limited late model debut, which we talked about some limited late model specs last week. He debuted at Florence Motor Speedway, finishing 8th of 31 cars. That's pretty impressive. In the meantime, he was tearing it up on the legend scene. In 49 starts, he collected 27 wins and 38 podiums en route to the Young Lions Asphalt National title. Guys, that is a winning percentage of 55%. That means if he stepped out onto the race course, he had a 55% chance of winning that race. And of course, with the podiums, it's insane. And most recently, Keelan started his first ever limited late model race with a victory. He ran away from the field by 4 seconds after starting on the pole and leading all 50 laps. Again, guys, this is a 12-year-old behind the wheel of a full-bodied stock car, beating out full-grown adults with 3, sometimes even 4 times his experience. And then the big news coming out yesterday that Keelan and his father, Kevin, are going to go head-to-head against one another in their hometown, Bakersfield, California, at Kevin Harvick's Kern County Raceway, May 31st for the Cars Tour West Pro Late Model event. And I just wanted to share a quote from Kevin Harvick that he put out yesterday. "Racing Keelan in my hometown for the first time is a pretty cool dad moment. Bakersfield has spent so much in the progression of my racing career, and being able to tie that together with the beginning of Keelan's racing career is pretty special." So Keelan will pilot the number 62 Hunt Brothers Pizza, which I don't know if you guys have heard of Hunt Brothers Pizza, but they're a pretty large pizza brand. So if you think of like a Little Caesars or a Domino's, they're kind of like that on the East Coast. This kid is at 12 years old, has a multi-million-dollar sponsor already backing him behind him. And his father is going to be piloting the number 29, which for you NASCAR fans will know that Kevin Harvick drove the number 29 car to his first ever NASCAR victory back in 2001. And so a lot of guys have been talking about the young talent in NASCAR. And so Keelan, I've seen a lot of comparisons to Joey Logano, who's now a 3-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. Connor Zilisch, who is making his NASCAR Cup Series debut before he turns 18 years old. That is absolutely incredible. I believe the movie Cars, Disney Pixar's Cars, is older than Connor Zilisch. And Zilisch, he won in his NASCAR Xfinity Series debut at Watson's Glen. So if Keelan's recent success is any indication of the future he can look forward to, a pretty darn bright career. However, I think this is the most important thing. And I know we've prefaced this a couple episodes. His father continues to stress development and taking Keelan through the ranks with proper racing. He spent obviously a lot of time on the karting scene before moving up to late models. And then even then with that model race, his dad was there, his mom was there, his great-grandfather, who also actually raced Delana Harvick, Kevin's wife, her father is also a racer who got his start back on the West Coast as well. So it's just racing is in Keelan Harvick's blood, and it's just incredible. And I think far too often that young talents are really rushed through the racing pipeline, and then after some struggles early on, they kind of get booted from their rides. But I think Keelan's taking the right approach. He's going really slow because arguably right now he's got 6 more years before he makes it to the Cup Series if he were to follow theoretically a Connor Zilisch approach. With 6 more years, he could rack up dozens and dozens of wins and really work on racing craft and racing etiquette, because those are, I think, the 2 most important things that any young driver can have. If you got to have a good head on your shoulder. You're driving, again, a full-bodied stock car with hundreds of horsepower, inches apart from your competitors. And you know what? He appears to have the right group behind him, and he's got, again, plenty of time before he can even think about really climbing the NASCAR ranks.
I mean, my mind is blown. I'm just thinking of 12 years old, and I just looked up the full body stock car. That's a car. It's a real car. And it's not like it's karting like he does, like a lot of kids do in their racing development. But that's just insane to me. I'm an F1 fan, so I like to do a lot of my comparisons there. I think of these generational talents like Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, and they didn't even race like this until they were 18, right? So it's that's just he's 12 and he's doing all this crazy stuff and he's good at it. A 55% win rate at the age of 12 is insane. So here's my question. Is there super licenses for this this kind of racing?
All right, so it gets a little murky. It's kind of by what the track provides. So if it's a NASCAR licensed regional track, as we call it, you have to have a NASCAR license in order to participate. And with a NASCAR license, you're allowed to do certain things. So there's a lot of young drivers who can run in the junior late model division. Mm-hmm. However, certain non-NASCAR licensed tracks, you're able to get away with different things so long as you get the right paperwork, the right everything in in order, if that makes sense. So there's no necessarily like super license where you have to accumulate points over time, get that notoriety. It's really just proving that you have what it takes to race. And so in the case of Keelan, I want to say because the Cars Tour West runs different rules, he'll be able to compete in that class. But for example, at my home track of All-American Speedway, we had Vito Cancilla, who we touched about in the pilot episode. He was not able to race during pro late model competition last season because of his age at the time. And so it's a little nuanced, and it kind of depends on the track you're racing at.
Okay, that's interesting. Also, I just want to touch on this too. I just think it's great that his dad is stressing development. I think it is definitely a thing in racing that's rushed a lot. Oh, this kid's really good. Let's push him out there immediately. So that's definitely very important because, like I said, F1, there's a lot of drivers who are great drivers, and they just get pushed out super early because they weren't properly developed. So,
and one thing to note with Kevin is he was kind of one of the people who got talked about potentially being rushed because he was the driver who filled in ultimately for Dale Earnhardt Sr. After his tragic passing in the Daytona 500 in 2001. And again, getting his first win just a few weeks into his career at Atlanta Motor Speedway was something that the whole NASCAR industry still looks back on fondly today. And guess what? Harvick still stayed in NASCAR's second-tier series, then the Busch Series, now Xfinity Series. He stayed in the Xfinity Series and ran several seasons and ended up kind of bushwhacking. And I know this is a side tangent, but it was basically where the Cup guys would come down to the Xfinity level and dominate and win races. So, for example, Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, I think they combined for it's got to be at least 150 of race wins between just the two of them. That's not including drivers like Mark Martin, Carl Edwards. So I'm going on and on. I digress, and I know we're running out of time. So, yeah, just going to be interesting to follow Keelan Harvick.
Yeah, no, that's an insane story, and it's very beautiful that he gets to even race alongside his father because, and it's also so insane to me that, like, you can, in NASCAR, obviously this is probably possible in all sports, but like in NASCAR that there is the ability for like 12-year-olds to race at this point at the professional level, because I feel like that's not common in like normal.
Absolutely
you're not going to see a
not.
12-year-old in the MLB. Like, anyway, it's just pretty insane, but we're running out of time. So thank you for listening to today's edition of the Scoutin Session. My name is Ella Wolter-Sánchez alongside
Jordan Talley
and Noah Reed.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.